So we're in a fortunate spot, actually, because we get to hear it right from the players themselves. So I'd like to get started by getting to know their respective occupations through the types of projects that they're working on. So CJ, since you're our veteran here today, I was hoping we'd start with you and get an idea of the types of cases you're working on for your role where you are.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the aspects that I help the corporate partnership department with is the sales process. So when they're going out to pitch particular companies, sometimes they want to understand who our fans are and the makeup of our fans. So where do our fans work? How much money do they make? Are they married? Are they single? Do they have kids? And all of that makeup kind of helps bridge the gap between our fans and a particular brand. During COVID, to give an example of what Liz asked for, during COVID, we're still trying to pitch partners. I mean, the pitching process goes on all year round, whether we're in season or out. So because the quarantine is going on, we sort of had to change the approach of what we were going for, not necessarily looking for, I guess still attaching our fans, but how do we attach us to certain companies that are doing well during this time? So we had to look at COVID sort of positive companies in a sense. So we decided not to reach out to companies that are airlines, that are hotels or things like that, because they're being hit pretty hard right now. And it's truly insensitive to kind of reach out to a company like that and ask them for money or to spend millions of dollars with us when they're just trying to survive in the business. But there are other companies that are actually doing positively right now. So social media companies, social networking companies like we have now with Zoom and Microsoft Teams and such like that are doing well. So we pretty much put together a list of a number of different categories, disinfectant companies, things like that, that these are certain areas that in order to continue with us and our business and profitability, these are certain areas that the sales team should probably pivot to in order to, keep the revenue going and sort of to keep it going while we're in quarantine. So that's one example. We provide insights and data mostly in regards to our fans and such, but we also have to look at the times, what's going on. Obviously, when holiday season comes around, we have a bunch of different things that goes on, off season, the summertime, things like that. But now the world is in a different place, so we need to pivot our approach and everything to a different place, but have some reasoning and data behind it as well, which I guess we could go into at another point. But that's just a project that we worked on throughout the quarantine that we're in.
Very good. And here I am. It's nice to see you. Corey, what do you say?
One project that, and I'll tie it back to current events, is, for us, CJ talked about the revenue generating side. For a lot of our aspect, it's about fan development. And so one research question that we posed a couple of years ago was, we've had 40 million fans coming through turnstiles every year, which is great. But how do we grow that? And one thing that bubbled up through a ton of research was just the Hispanic community. And so part of that primary research that Brennan talked about was, how is that Hispanic consumer, how do they perceive or think about minor league baseball? Demographics, lifestyles, consumer behavior. But then also we looked at what other sports teams are doing to connect with this consumer. And a couple key takeaways for us. One, oftentimes one Hispanic Heritage Night often seemed a little bit disingenuous because the consumer felt we were only welcome maybe this one night. And then two, they want all of the marketing, the content, and anything related to the experience to infuse kind of their cultural, what makes their culture great. And so for us, we took that and built out kind of the Hispanic initiative, SD Retiro Ser Fan. It's fun to be a fan. And we picked selective 4 markets that represented kind of a growth opportunity for us. So then once we have those markets, we actually worked through research to actually build a brand and a new identity for these teams that reflect kind of that Hispanic consumer in that community. And so what started as 4 teams Proud to say now we're at 92 of our teams participating. And so it has driven revenue through ticket sales, merchandise, sponsorships. But I think more importantly for us, we're looking at it as benefiting the diversity of the staff. Is it benefiting their community partnerships and also partners that they work with? So from a research project standpoint, that fan development and how we kind of initiated that was a big area of focus for us. And that has kind of paved the foundation for us, given COVID, of how we can directly impact that community because we already have connections with them.
Zach, how are we doing on questions? Do we have some questions from the audience?
Thank you for asking. I'd love to hop in. Corey, this question comes to you from Ryan Conway. Everything has been affected by the pandemic, but how specifically in a unique way has minor league baseball been affected, with the season canceled and maybe not a return?
Yeah, these continue to be unprecedented times, and our season, we kind of had a little probably thinking that the season would be canceled. But I think what we've been able to do from a strategic standpoint is really think about this form of closure and how we come back in 21 to prepare ourselves to be bigger, better, and bolder. And so that comes with, to CJ's point, thinking about what categories to go after, thinking about how to enhance the fan experience and make ballparks cleaner and safer. So that's a lot of fan research that we're doing. So I think in a weird way, obviously it's detrimental to the league. It's the first time without baseball MILB since 1901. But for us, it's really how do we kind of move the ball forward so we can kind of pivot with the times.
That's great, Zach. Any other questions at this current? That was a great question, by the way. Kudos to the audience. Any other questions at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll ask another one. So this one comes from Dustin Tran. Analytics in basketball, how has it changed over the years? Anyone can hop in on this one. Anyone got an answer?
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
CJ, you can kind of tackle it. I think just as a point of reference for everybody, and I think most of these conversations are going to be around the business side, not necessarily what we call operations or personnel side of things. So I think CJ, you can definitely answer that on behalf of, the Wizards from the kinds of analytics that you guys utilize from the business standpoint. But I think it's important to note that the core of these kinds of questions won't be about how do you pick the number one pick or how do you evaluate or scout talent. This is really about how are you utilizing this to drive business. So I guess I just want to put that out there. And Zach, as we look at questions, let's make sure we can kind of focus on that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess one question I'd like to put to the group, and Marcus, I want to get you and Brendan involved too. Clearly, Corey just talked about how the league the schedule was canceled. CJ's dealing with that too. The NHL and the NBA have had some games, but talk to me about what it's like, both Marcus, as you kind of address it from the agency standpoint, and then Brendan, not just necessarily how it's affecting you, because obviously it's a negative fashion, but how are you guys organizations pivoting, and maybe how are some of these aspects of stats analytics being involved in how you guys are adjusting to challenging times? Marcus, you want to go for it?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So for us, as an agency, we're a client service business. So as our clients are affected by the pandemic and trying to understand the different nuances of these social issues, we immerse ourselves and become subject matter experts, whether we're working on research projects to really figure out how can companies address being anti-racist in a social issues environment. How can brands connect with their consumers, knowing that you shouldn't be heavy on sales when a lot of people are losing jobs? So how can you continue to connect with your consumers? And so we pivot our research to seeing how these consumers have been affected and how as a brand can we be helpful and authentic at the same time. Because there is a way, like if you're a grocery store, obviously like consumers still need to eat. And so figuring out ways to connect with them. But if you're a bank or you're a credit card company and a lot of people are out of jobs and they can't make payments, how can you pivot to be sensitive, knowing that this is a time that everyone is going through together?
Brendan, how about you guys?
Yeah, so from like an analytics perspective, for us, what we've really been trying to tackle and get our heads around is just how much does all of this downtime in the sports space, is that going to translate into increased viewership, decreased viewership? Maybe is there going to be an initial bump and things will eventually come back down to normal? So our work is really revolved around that. So we've had multiple primary studies that we've kind of fielded revolving both around the coronavirus and around both the Black Lives Matter movement and how just the social state of this country is going to impact people's appetite to watch live sports. And it's very, very, very turbulent time, obviously. And from our perspective, we're just concerned about making sure that, we still have viewerships there, also that we tackle and address the state of the country with the right tone. So that's what a lot of our work has revolved around. From the scheduling perspective, I think that the biggest key for us is just we have to be just incredibly flexible. I think the MLS's back tournament, obviously it's not one of our properties, but I think there are some lessons that can be learned from it in that, they have to be very, very, a game could be canceled at the drop of a coin. And just be flexible and be able to work that makeup into your schedule if it comes, and be willing to kind of assess, okay, so this is no longer going to be maybe in the optimal time slot. What are going to be the potential impacts that we're going to see from that, and how our estimates going to change as a result. So for us, it's just being super, super flexible and realizing that unprecedented times call for unprecedented actions, and we need to really be on top of what's going on in space.
Yeah, I'd like to actually tackle the NBA question. Can I jump back?
Go for it, Liz.
Yeah, so I'd like to make the case that the business side of analytics is just as exciting as the player side. So what in this answer? So when we think about the early stages of the NBA, they used to have all of the prices for all of the games at the same level. So if you had a Saturday game with, not an exciting team, two teams playing, it might be the same price as a game with LeBron James in it, right? So one of the biggest movements in NBA analytics on the business side was deciding to charge more for games that would attract more people and would attract more demand. Still in play today. Fast forward to now, and the explosion of artificial intelligence is revolutionizing the sport industry, including the NBA. So recently, as part of my role, if you decide you want to teach in academia, part of my role is researching, doing a lot of similar projects, as Brennan stated. We're in the same work here. Just recently did a project on natural language processing and how teams are using it, to kind of say it in plain language. You'd be surprised that you might be, when you're clicking on a website, you might be having automated conversations with a chatbot that is programmed to respond to you. Whereas the sales teams and customer relationship teams, they'd have to orchestrate those conversations on their own and take the time to do that. They can also analyze large volumes of social media posts. So if you're posting about a team and you're issuing the team name in the public space, they can track all of those things. So I think it's gone from pricing strategies early on to, for lack of a better word, creepy, exciting tactics to track customer behavior, which is, exciting and has ethical implications in itself.
Liz, if I could ask a follow-up, because I think
you
hit on something, and I want to get a show of hands here. Raise your hand if your job existed 10 years ago. How cool is that? Right? And I think that's kind of what you're talking about, Liz. Analytics in sports used to be about wins and losses, and it still is. I know there's a lot of people interested, but the jobs that you all have today didn't exist probably even 5 years ago. And for our students who are, as maybe 6 years away from college graduation. Can you imagine the types of career opportunities that are going to be available or affordable to them? Anyone want to comment on that? I mean, to Lich's point, there's so many cool problems to solve through stats analytics.
I mean, I can respond to that a little bit. I mean, just being at Monumental for 4 years now, I mean, we've seen a growth of change. You know, when I first got there, we have pretty much some of the teams we have now, but then we added an esports team. So we have a esports team in Wiz District Gaming. Like, esports wasn't even a thing before. So now that's becoming a big thing and growing globally, you know. One of the things that we did is we changed up our entire arena. So we took down a lot of the static dioramas, but you probably just know them as static advertisements on the wall, because it costs a certain amount to put that up, and then it's only one advertiser. So what we did was we just took them all down, and we added just screens around the entire arena to where you could have multiple advertisers on there. It doesn't cost a lot to change it. It's just a digital file that we can update and change, and that becomes more revenue for us. It might be more money up front to put those screens up, but once you have the screens there, then they can get going and rolling, as you would see in Times Square or many other large cities that have these big screens out there that have different advertisements. So we changed in that regard as well. And then, I mean, this has been around, but like sports betting is also coming. So now we're adding a sports book in the arena as well. So that's another thing. Like, how will we deal with fans coming to the arena, being able to place bets? And that isn't truly as large as it is in America, I guess you could say. People, you know, even just the advent of fantasy sports, look how much that's grown, you know, over time. And DraftKings and FanDuel, you know, a couple of years ago. So like, sort of what you were saying, Patrick, is like, we've seen the change, and all of these changes we've seen at Monumental, but I mean, I think it would affect everyone else in their business as well. Good point, Patrick. But yeah, it's just the amount of change that we see over time, like more businesses, whether in gaming or, you know, the way that advertising is done, and how we get analytics and, you know, sports betting. I think it's a lot that's coming about so far, but that will come as well.
I would just add, I mean, 10 years ago, Instagram, Uber, WeWork weren't even companies. So just kind of put that in perspective of how they've become such a critical role in all of our lives. I would say the one point I would mention is, for you, when you're looking to get into sports, it's so much bigger than just for a league or a team. Even on this call, you have Marcus with an agency, you have CJ with a league or a team, myself with a league, and Brennan with a media company. And it's all kind of this ecosystem, and Liz in the academia space. So I would just say, you know, broaden out and be kind of curious about all the different ways you can get into sports. There's a lot of extensions where you can explore.
I think I need to follow up with that, because I think that, I mean, not only was that like an excellent point, and I try to tell students that, but I think it just needs to be hit on even more. I think a lot of people, even when I was in grad school, it was like, all right, where do I want to work after grad school? So it's like, I want to work for X team, blah, blah, blah. So even if you have the four, you know, the major four leagues, there's but so many teams. And if you want to be in a certain region, you have but so many options. And if you don't get any of those options, then you don't have anything to do. So I always tell people to broaden their horizons. When you're watching a game, look at what's going on in that game. There's the TV channel that you're watching, media. There is, you know, different branding that's going on around it. They say it all the time. Geico is huge in these types of insurance companies, airline companies, and such. That's the companies that I'm talking about in the sponsorship round. Corey, what he just finished talking about was like the league. What league is this? So there's also the league office as well that is different. I mean, it's part of everything, but it's a little bit different as well. And then there's everything else that goes along around it. There's agencies. Like you said, there's professors. We're even thinking about talking to like Destination DC that's here. They're involved with hospitality and they're involved with tourism, but sports is also involved with that. So like if March Madness is happening at the arena, at Capital One Arena, not only is the games happening at our arena, but they have to worry about how people are going to get to the city. All right, that's tourism. Once they're in the city, what's the hospitality? Where are certain restaurants that's going to be open? Things like that. Are there other events that's going on? So all of these comprise sports as a whole. So you don't necessarily have to work at a team to be involved with sports. And I think that's very, very important.
Now that you're talking about these current roles in the field, and great explanation, right, of everything that you can possibly do, the door is wide open. The possibilities are amazing. Working in the sport industry is fast-paced. It's never the same. But while we're talking about, entering the sport field, curious as to what you guys think. What are the skills that are necessary for someone to be really good at this? I think as the students are making visions for themselves, thinking about, anyone who's here is thinking about the future in some way, shape, or form. But as students are creating a vision, what should they start thinking about? What skills should they start thinking about?
I think, and I know the panel will expand on my thought, is just to be curious. You all have access to LinkedIn. Look at everyone's profile, see what type of jobs they have. There's a skills section, see what types of skills they have. But the most valuable skill you can have as a student is to just be curious. Like, I sat in a computer science intro class as a freshman, and I was like, this isn't for me. And then I went on a path and started studying analytics and wasn't really thinking about sports. Didn't know that there was jobs in the sports industry. And just out of curiosity, like working in my athletic department at my college, and it's like, oh, this is a career path. I'm reaching out to different people on LinkedIn, and them giving me time and me asking questions was just a way for me to, all right, those people have those skills. Like, they have jobs that I want. That's a career path that I think I can take. So just first and foremost, to be curious.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. Like, I know for like in me and my job, a lot of the projects that I've been working on that would be classified as like analytics have almost all exclusively been self-driven. Like, nobody has come up to me and asked like, hey, for example, we're really curious of whether or not how an overtime game is going to impact the ratings for an NHL game. Nobody's come up and asked me to do that. It's just something that I was watching a game and I'm like, oh, you know what? Like, I wonder if there's an impact there. And just having that natural curiosity of is really going to be very helpful. Like, I'm almost positive that the majority of my analytics projects have been self-driven and things that I thought were interesting and want to look into, more so than someone telling me, hey, can you look into this for me? So I think that's super important. Another thing is also, I think the ability to admit that you might be wrong about something is also important. Like, I know a lot of the times you might go into a project like a preconceived notion of how the results should look or might look. And it's really easy to get caught in that circle of, well, this is how it should be. Obviously, like, my analysis might be wrong. Whereas a lot of the times, like, you got to trust your own instincts and trust your own judgment. Be like, okay, this is not, like, just being able to admit that you're wrong is something that I think can get you a lot of ways, and it's going to help you out in the future and keep you out of trouble.
That's great. I'd love to hop in here for a second just to get in some questions from our chat. So you guys just touched in, on the skills that are needed for a job, in analytics. Nicholas Nunez Ruiz and Justin Hughes would like to know what they can be doing now as high school students, actions they can be taking, to put themselves, ahead. This can go out to anyone.
Yeah. I think a few things is to follow up with, like, knowing exactly what you want to do, right? So it's like, all right, you're here and you're exploring these different avenues. So if you want to do, like, for me, it was like, I'm interested in doing some sort of marketing of sports. I don't know what that means. Okay, so then whether I'm on conferences like this or I'm talking to different people in different panels and I'm seeing different ideas of what they do, it's like, okay, this person does marketing in partnerships. This person does it at the league level. This person does it at with media. Okay, which area of that you want to do? For me, it was like, I want to go forward in sponsorships. All right, now that I know that I want to do sponsorships, what area of sponsorships? And then I got to that next level of like, oh, I didn't know that there were different areas. Then of exploring more, it's like, you can work in the sales aspect. You can actually sell sponsorships. Or if you don't want to sell, you could actually be the person that activates sponsorships, where you're executing things in the contract. And I was like, okay, I'm not like a salesperson, but I want to do, the actual activation. Oh, from there, sort of what Marcus was saying, there's more to this. There's an area of analytics that's also involved with sponsorships, which also has, part of my background as well. So like, just keep diving in and keep learning. But I think the way that you do that is being open and being willing to meet people and hear their experiences and ask questions. Don't be afraid to reach out to people and ask them for their time or their willingness to help you. People want to help you, and everyone on this call has had help in some sort of way. So we are here because we want to actually pay it back and pay it forward. So be available. I mean, make yourself available and reach out to us, because we are resources for you. So I think someone asked the question, like, how do I go about, increasing my LinkedIn? It's like, start with your people that you know already and have that social media connection. Add those people that you already have that connection. Maybe you might see someone that they're connected to that you might want to talk to. Oh, I see that you know this person that works in marketing in this area. Can you connect me to that person? That expands your network. But also, if you see any of us and you're interested in our careers and things like that, you can send us you can connect with us, but don't connect with us without sending us a message. Always try to attack some sort of message or something, because I'm sure we all get many connections at all times and don't know who people are. But if you tell me, hey, I was on the Sports Biz Camps call and I heard what you said and that was great, it's like, oh, okay, now we sort of connected in some sort of manner, not just randomly. And from there, then, you meet us, and then you can talk and expand from there. But I mean, I'm sure the other panelists have more. I don't want to keep talking, but that's what I have to say.
Man. I would just say, exact to that question, some things you could be doing at school is research projects, and also potentially either create maybe a sports analytics club at the high school, or if there's an existing one, look to be part of it. You could help work with the high school athletic staff, but just kind of getting motivated. To Marcus and Brennan's point, being curious, I was related to when we were all kids and talking to our parents or strangers. They're like, eat your vegetables. And you'd be like, why? The sky is blue. Why? And so taking that mindset of just, in obviously a more professional way, of what keeps you up at night. Have we ever thought about this? What if we try this? And so that inquisitive kind of nature, I think if you start building that process, and then also I think being extremely communicative, because you're going to be putting together a lot of dots, and it's extremely important to be able to communicate that in a concise way, and recommend, actionable things that the company should be doing. So I think being able to communicate effectively is a huge skill for that area.
And I would imagine when the students ask about skills, they're thinking more technical skills. But you guys, for all the students out there, you can hear us, and we're really talking about those interpersonal skills, being able to build relationships. Everybody you talk to in the sports industry will talk about it's a relationship business, and because at the end of the day, we're problem solvers. The application to solve a problem, whether it's a regression analysis or a research project, those things are easily learned, or relatively easily learned. But to actually be curious and to want to solve problems, that is the most valuable skill that you'll run into. And then also just remember, like, we were all in your shoes, we're all people, and I haven't met anyone in life that's had it all figured out. So continue to be curious, ask questions, and you'll make your own lane.
Yeah, and if anyone is curious and like what technical skills you could potentially be trying to learn in high school, I would probably recommend, if your high school has like maybe a beginning programming class or a beginning statistics class, those are probably the two big ones. It doesn't even really matter which type of programming you're doing. A lot of the skills are translatable, and you just can kind of pick up a different language. A lot of them have the same flow to them. So I think those would be my two suggestions. Was that if your high school does have a programming class or a statistics class of some sort, those would both be super helpful.
Yeah, make sure after you learn like if you were in a stats class and you learned the regression, make sure you actually skip to the back of the book where they do the applied part that you never get to in math class. All about the application of those skills.
Great call.
I know, deriving insights, our graduate students are still working on that. It just takes a long time to gain the experience. So I can add to this conversation by dovetailing on what Marcus said is don't be afraid to bump your head against the wall a couple of times for the next 8 to 10 years of your life. Because being a great statistician means loving the discipline, loving the rules, and making mistakes every now and then. And to add to what Brennan said, some of the specific programs that are out there, I work with high school students in this capacity, and I'm happy to mentor research projects. If I had 50 phone calls after this session, I would be very happy about it. But high school students will take on research projects that interest them. You know, for those of you who are interested in the NBA or MLB, for example, you may take on a project there, but you need some help, you know, getting started if you're a beginner. And if you want to think about programming languages, you can go to datacamp.com. It's a really nice spot to pick up new skills at the entry level, I will tell you what. So R, Python, and SQL. What's really fun about learning these languages is at the onset, you think, how on earth am I going to learn this language? And a month, 2 months, 3 months in and practicing, you can feel really capable in what you're doing. So I think comprehensively, I think we've got some good advice here. The Sport Analytics Club advice is really good too. I mean, I start a Sport Analytics Club at your high school with a math professor potentially as a mentor, or a willing teacher, you know, to take that on. There's so many ways to get started.
And I think to wrap a bow on it, on that specific comment, Liz, I dropped in datacamp.com. Can I go to that? I'm going to.
Yes, please. I use it.
Datacamp.com?
Yeah, I'm going to go.
You absolutely should. I go. Like, I still go. I really like to learn.
You know how I know that?
I'm a lifelong learner.
You were like, this is awesome, datacamp.com. But
I really love it. Marcus loves it too. He's nodding his head.
Yeah, I used it when I was in grad school, and like one of my coworkers, he told me about it, and he was working at the Tampa Bay Lightning at the time, and he got his job because he did a regression analysis, and he studied math at Dartmouth, and it's like that's how he was interested in hockey, and he predicted draft picks. I'm like, that's awesome. I'm not that technically driven. I'm more in that partnership space, using the insights, but I that stuff is amazing, and if you enjoy it, like, more power to you.
yeah, and I think what I wanted to talk about, I think you guys did a great job of talking through like networking and what you can do to start now. And, you know, all these individuals, they represent different organizations, but you could create a research project. You can reach out to CJ. Like, you could get on the Monumental Sports Entertainment like directory, figure out who has a job title regarding like strategy or research or intelligence. Reach out, introduce yourself, and say, "Hey, I'm a high school student. I love the Caps. I love the Wizards. I love minor league baseball. Whatever. Can I do a research project for you?" And yes, some people might say no, but if you do that to 10 people, I think you're going to get 6 yeses. So to Liz's point, and to the whole group, for those of you that are trying to figure out, how do I network? What do I do? Like, just do it. You like solving problems. Like, those would be fun things for you. If I was your teacher and I gave you like an assignment in class, you'd be like, this is cool. I want to do that. Just like create it for yourself, to Brennan's initial point. And all that information's up on the internet. You guys can figure out who these people are, where they work. And that's a great way to start. So I guess I wanted to just make sure that I felt that we empowered you all to feel confident that you can help someone, and just putting yourself out there. I think people will be responsive to that.
Two things. One, when people say reach out to them, do it. That's honestly the biggest barrier. People will say that all the time, and they will not reach out to you. Like, I tell everyone, reach out to me. If they've spoken with me, I say continue to reach out, and pretty much 99% of them don't. And something that I think that's helped me in my career is that I do. And if someone says no and they don't follow, or they just don't answer, then that's fine. There's plenty of people out there that want to be helpful. I know everyone on this panel wants to be helpful to you if you reach out to them. A person on this panel was helpful to me when I started my career, which is Corey. Like, I think he's a marketing expert, and he came and spoke into one of our classes, and I had a question about a project I was working on, and he was there to help me out, and I'm forever grateful to him. And now we're on a panel together, so it really couldn't be better.
It comes full circle.
And then I see the question in the chat that I wanted to answer is like, oh, okay, it got answered by Patrick about Stephen A. Perfect.
You like that? No, he doesn't do what we do. Nobody's like,
Yeah, definitely not. He's making a lot of money doing what he's doing, so he's doing all right.
Yeah, I would just say tactically, you always hear network, but actually how to do it. So one thing that's been helpful for me is every week I set a goal of connecting with, one new person a week, but then also reconnecting with someone who I've already had a relationship with. So, what gets measured obviously gets done usually. So look forward to Patrick's point, people with business intelligence, strategy, even innovation and analytics in their roles, and look at people who are maybe senior, so C-suite VPs, directors, but then also look for entry-level people, because you'll get both perspectives on how to actually get to the path that they're on, while at the same time building your personal network. And to Marcus's point, I would say be confident, because you guys and everyone on this call are a consumer that all of us are trying to reach. And so you actually have a lot of value to provide to any entity and organization. So a lot more than you think, usage of social media, what type of content is resonating. So just keep that in mind, that you do have something of value to bring. And the second best answer is no. To Marcus's point, there's plenty of other people out there who are willing to help, but my experience, there's more of those who want to support than others who might not.
I just want to follow up to that. I think you want your goal to be inquisitive, to ask questions, to understand different people's roles. But one thing I think that needs to be also made clear is, like, you want the person you're reaching out to know who you are and to remember who you are. So the way that you do that is what Corey just said, is he's reconnecting. He's meeting someone new, but also reconnecting with someone that he's already spoken to. So once you connect with someone once, it doesn't mean anything if you talk to them once and never talk to them for the rest of your life. Like that's not building a meaningful connection. A meaningful connection is you talk to them, some time may go by, you talk to them again, some time may go by, you talk to them again. And just like any other relationship, you get a chance to know them. You get a chance to know each other. And when reaching out, like I said, you want this person to know who you are. So keep them up to date. What's going on in school? Where'd you get accepted into college? What classes are you taking? What are you thinking about your major being? So forth. So where's your internships? And you keep that connection going. And so once that time comes along where they can put in a good word for you, put in a recommendation, or even just offer just advice at some point in time, like, that's where the relationship comes in at. And so we're talking about all these things, but like, I think the part that we missed is that it's more of a constant communication thing. And like I said, it doesn't have to be every day, but every so often. And Corey, like Corey just said, he's doing that. So make sure you do that as well. Make sure you try to keep up the conversation going with whoever you reach out to as well.
That's great. Let me hop in here for a second. We got a lot of great questions in the chat. But first, I'd just like to mention, I am a high school student. I have reached out to hundreds of, professionals such as yourself. And as long as you're genuine and not trying to get something from them and just trying to learn from them, you will get responses and you will learn a lot. Now, going to the chat, we got an anonymous person who wants to know, does the college and major you go to matter today? And does it matter in the sports analytics industry? And so do you have to major in sports management or statistics? Anyone can hop in.
I see shaking of heads, no. Okay, and at some level that's true. I will point out who it was. But if you want to get to the upper echelons, the tippy top of the game, an elite quantitative degree is necessary. But to work in most sport analytics jobs, a quantitative background is great, but knowing that diverse applicants create a diverse workforce. So my major in undergrad was philosophy with a minor in math. Now, I coupled that with a master's in sports administration, a master's in business analytics, and a doctoral degree. But where your journey starts isn't where it has to end. But do want to let you know that the tippy top tier of some of these really competitive sport analytics jobs are looking for, elite degrees. For example, the director of analytics for the NFL, and these are the very quantitative jobs. He went to Brown. He went to Bates, my undergrad, and then he went to Brown for a doctoral degree. So I would say yes and no. And I think we're about to have a debate. Ready to go. Who's next?
That was well said.
No, there's definitely multiple paths to the top. There's value in going to those upper echelon universities, getting those top degrees as far as if it's a quantitative degree. But also you have your own path. Like we said, like you have much more information and knowledge than you think. And so continue to go down your path. Like if you're, let's say you're an entrepreneur and you want to work in sales, like if you go to school and get a math degree, but you work in sales, that doesn't make sense. But if you start a business and you make $100K on your own, it's like anybody will hire you. But I wouldn't know why you want to be hired by somebody else for doing that. But anybody will hire you if you can show that you can. And so that's true if you're doing it directly with sales. And if you can prove that you can drive business through your quantitative analysis, you become an asset to that company. At the end of the day, it's about the bottom line. So if you can drive the bottom line up and make money, you will be employed or employ yourself.
I did want to insert myself towards the end. So I screwed up, and that's why we started late. I know some of our professionals have a hard stop. Marcus, Corey, I know you've been on with us since 1:45, so we're pushing past an hour and 15 minutes. You're standing up, so your feet are probably getting tired.
Yeah, I can't feel my lower half, but it's all good.
Liz, are you able to stay on, for an extra 5 minutes or so? I just want to make sure, once again, I apologize about that, Liz. So we're going to try and rock this until 3:05, guys, but we're going to lose Marcus.
I could stay on as well if I need. Yeah.
Great. So I just want to
please reach out.
There's a question from Ram, which I think is a good segue. What's your favorite part of your current job? Like, you guys are solving business problems. You're helping the business, not necessarily the wins and losses, but in other areas. Like, what's so cool about doing that? Help our students understand that.
I'll go first and say my last bit. Me, I've come to love cliches in the professional world because they're cliches for a reason, because they're true. Like it's always about the people. I said earlier, the sports industry is small and it's all about relationships. Like I connected with CJ after this. My friends actually are taught by Dr. Liz and they say great things about her. And Corey and I, we are friends. So that's my favorite part about the job, is really making a new friend. Like you can't be friends with everybody, not everything's not for everybody, but when you work with a client and you guys build a relationship that is long lasting, whether they go on to a different industry or a different job, like that's the coolest thing about it. And it doesn't hurt when you work in sports. You go to some pretty cool events. Like myself, I've been to a couple of national championships and it's one of my favorite events to go to because I love college football. But please reach out, everybody. I do have to jump. I really appreciate you all listening in today and having me. And I know that the rest of the panel is going to take off probably even better without me here. Bye, guys.
See you, Marcus. Patrick, I would just say to that question, we've been around since 1901. And I think what gets me going in our team is the fact that every single day when you walk in, you can do something for the first time ever. And I think that drive and that opportunity, while some days it's hard to pin down where to prioritize things and what to do, but I think that carrot at the end of the stick of being able to do something new every day has been a big kind of perk of the job.
Yeah, for me, I would say it's mostly I think that Liz could probably attest to this as well. I am very much a nerd. I tell you as much about what's going on in the NFL, so like a niche sport like Formula One, or I love all sports anywhere. And so for me, I got super lucky in that I have a job where, as a media company, like we're interested in all of those sports, because like even like if we don't have a sport maybe on our air, we need someone in our role in order to contextualize, like, okay, like is this doing what good or bad for this other network, and would we maybe be interested in the future? And so for me, I love just being able to touch like so many different sports instead of being kind of pigeonholed into one area, and then to work on in an area like in primary research. Like I will admit, so no one on this call knows, but I actually worked for Liz back in graduate school, and like I was pretty hard set on analytics and honestly not super excited about primary research work at first. And then like as it got going, like I kind of really got a like got the bug for it and really, really enjoyed it. And so for me to be able to kind of work across so many different sports, and then also in an area that's kind of been like a newfound love for me, has been a really cool experience.
Yeah. Lastly, Patrick, I mean, like I said, we have 160 teams. I've been to 100 of our ballparks. So you get to experience and meet so many incredible people. This is going to be a shameless plug, but MILB is a great breeding ground, and I think a career opportunity because you get your hands on so many different aspects of the business. So a lot of senior execs that you see have either started or continue to thrive in the league. But if you're really looking to make a direct impact and immediate impact, there's 160 of them out there. So happy to be an intro or a connection for you.
I think I agree with everything that everybody said. I think there are parts, being able to go to certain events, be there for all these types of things. I mean, we get access to games and things like that for free. I mean, I think those are the greatest aspects of it. I mean, the best is, which is why I ran, is this right here. Our Capitals won the Stanley Cup 2 years ago, so all employees got a championship ring. So that was amazing. The idea of wanting to play in sports, not being good enough to make it to the professionals, but still being able to work in the sports team and the team to win and to get a ring, that's just amazing. And that was easily a top 5 moment of my life, of just being a part of that run. And then also the Mystics won last year. So we have another ring that's on the way. And so waiting for that one to come. So the perks of working in sports are great. And so I don't want that to be it's true. There are a lot of good perks. So those are some of them that I enjoy.
Hey, Patrick, is there a way after this call to get all these questions? Because would love to, I know we won't get to all of them right now, but any of them that might be specific or general enough, it'll be good to just send them a note after this.
Yeah, I can try and grab them. Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
Well, I can give one right now, try to knock out as many as we can. I know we're in a crunch for time, but if any of you can just give, a challenge, working in sports analytics today. I mean, it's changed. What's been a challenge that's been created in the new way analytics are done?
Brennan, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. So I think one thing is that it's super competitive. I think if you're trying to I'm pretty recent graduate, so I think one thing, when you're trying to get into the industry, I think one of the worst things that you could say, if you win an interview, is I applied for this job because I want to work in sports. That's not good enough. Everyone who's applied for that job has that reason. So you need to have something else that you can bring to the table. Maybe you applied for the job because you really like the opportunity to work at on the partnership side, like CJ, or you really have really primary research like myself. You need to bring something else to the table than just I want to work in sports, because that's not enough. It's super competitive out there, and to have something else you can bring to the table is going to be that extra thing that gets you over the line.
Yeah, I think we're getting ready to close. I once again, I want to apologize to Liz and the rest of the group for getting started late. But I also wanted to thank Liz and the rest of the group for doing an awesome job. It was really great. I think to Corey's point, there's 1,000 additional questions that we all could have. So I think we have the email information for everyone that attended. So maybe we can either do a follow-up chat, or we can do a follow-up recorded video and share with the group, or even just have a doc, Corey, if you want to get involved and help with that, we can definitely do it. But what I would like to kind of ask you guys to do now is, and Liz, I would love for you to answer this as well. Before we go, put yourself back in your 16-year-old body, and you're at this camp and you just heard these amazing folks. What should they do now? What are, going back to Marcus's comment about reading the back of the book and applications, what do you wish you would have known then that you now know as it pertains to a potential career in sports?
I think that there are careers in sports outside of being a coach, an agent, a player, or a GM. So for me, I didn't know really that I wanted to work in sports until well after I graduated undergrad. So you are easily at least 10 years ahead of me, at this point of where you want to be. So once I got there, then it was like for me figuring out. So what I didn't know after I graduated with that, there were so many different careers in sports. Now you're going through this and you're learning about different careers and things like that. So what I did when I was going through my learning is like, okay, someone mentioned this, someone mentioned that. Then I would just Google search things. This person said this person said that. What is that about? Like, I never even heard about that. What is what is sponsorship analytics? I don't even know what that is. Just look those up, and you have the ability to reach out to us now and ask us questions. So I think I think the idea is being exposed to other ideas that you may not have known existed. Take it all in, absorb it, takes down some notes, do your research outside, just look these things up. I'm sure there's a ton of YouTube videos. There's tons of stuff on Google as well that you can just search, and people have information out there. And then speak to certain people and just talk to them and get to learn more. I think you should use these next few years of high school of just exploring and understanding. And I think for the conferences, knowing all the different areas of sports that you can work in that exist outside of the ones that you see on TV.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, CJ, of just there's no one singular path mixed with there's so many different options. I would balance that with self-awareness. And so once you're digesting all of this information about all these opportunities, look at yourself and ask, what am I passionate about? What are my strengths? What are opportunities for growth for myself? Because then you become a well-rounded individual. You know yourself, you know what you're good at, what you can bring to the table. And then to CJ's point, you're learning the industry and being a student of the game. So I would just say myself, especially 16-year-old, I didn't know what left and right were, but, just having a better understanding of what your strengths are and what you're passionate about.
I want to jump in before the next person goes to follow up what Corey said. Although you may feel like you like something now and you try it out, that does not mean that does not mean that is a failure. That is a success, because you thought you liked it, you tried it out, and it's like, you know what, I actually don't want to do that. Maybe I want to do this. And so pivoting and finding a different area in sports or in another career is still fine, because you actually took that time to research it and actually go forward. So you don't have to have all the answers today or tomorrow. The answers will come as you go forward with life. So be prepared to understand that, of like, it's not the end all be all. If you get to a certain place and discover that it is not what you thought it was and you no longer like it.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that Corey and CJ have said. Like, I know I was a mechanical engineering major. You guys are way ahead of where I was at the same point in my life. Like, it took me a very long time to realize that I wanted to do this and to make the pivot. And it can work the other way too. Maybe you get into sports analytics and you realize you don't like it and you want to go to somewhere else. Both are okay. You guys are still young. You have a long life ahead of you, and it's okay to admit that, to change course and maybe and move into a different path. For something a little bit more, for people who really want to just kind of see what it's about, I would definitely recommend looking at your high school course catalogs and seeing if there are any beginning programming and beginning statistics classes. Those are things that I took one of them and not the other, and it would have been a lot easier on myself in the future if I had taken both. So I think for something a little bit more actionable, I think both of those things would also be a very, very good first step.
That's great. That's really great advice. I think that advice not only applies to 16-year-olds, but I think anyone could benefit from advice like that. We've got some sages on this panel here. So I will finish it up with building the skills with a capital Z, skills. If I were 16 again, what I would do is I would take 20 minutes of a day and build my quantitative skills. it just takes a long time to develop those skills. So devoting some time to it, carving out some time, you know, what would you have to give up for 20 minutes a day? You know, not much, but see how far you get just by doing that. And I want a high school sport analytics club, Corey. Sorry, I'm totally stealing this. I want a high school sport analytics club. I would have loved to be a part of that. So if you can get that rolling with a research project, you know, I've got your first research project in mind, consumer research for professional sport, where you research each other and what your preferences are about what you want to see. I can't imagine a professional sport team who wouldn't be interested in that. So yes, and good luck. It was great to be with you today. I think everyone feels that way.
Liz, thank you so much. You did an amazing job moderating. Thank you so much. Corey, thank you for standing tall. An hour and 23 minutes. Brennan, thank you for joining. I don't think you're a nerd. I know you think you're a nerd. You're not a nerd.
I disagree.
I think you're a brilliant young man. Thank you for joining. CJ, thanks so much, man. CJ and I connected just a couple weeks ago, and he was able to join this panel on short notice and really brought a lot of great perspective. So thank you all. I can't thank you enough. Zach, I thought you did a job well done.
Thank you.
Locker room leader. Great job. He just gets right in there. I love that about him.
Yeah. Well done, Zach. That was good.
Good job, Zach.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, students. Really appreciate it. Please stick around. 4 p.m. We've got our final all-team meeting. We're going to talk about the Rooney Rule, a panel discussion led by Jim Rooney of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Really excited for that. Obviously, for the professionals, we'd love to have you guys join as well. Feel free to join that. But once again, thank you so much. Learning happened. Progress happened. Congratulations to all of you for attending, and thanks to our esteemed panelists for joining.
Absolutely.
Thank you. See you.
Thanks, everyone.